Welcome, everybody. You're here with the Doc. That's me and the Baron, my co-host. And welcome to That Reminds Me Of. This is episode 49. And today we're talking about the TV series Time, starring Sean Bean and written by Jimmy McGovern, directed by Lewis Arnold.
And if you haven't listened to our show before or watched us on YouTube, this is a show where we talk about films and TV shows and the things that we were reminded of while watching them. There are spoilers. It's just something that happens. We try not to spoil too much, but it does happen. If that bothers you, maybe you should go watch the show first and then come back and listen.
Baron, Time.
That's the show. We don't often talk about TV shows, although that we have a couple times, and this might be our third. I'm not sure now, second or third.
We did the Blind Manor. That was its TV series. What else was there?
I'm now blanking on anything else that we've done. I think this might be the second then.
This is our second TV show, and it came about. You just watched it. We hadn't prepared to review it, but you watched it. You said it's a 3-part series, and I remember you saying to me that you watched the first one, and then had to watch the second, then had to watch the third, and you did it in one sitting.
Yeah, ended up staying up till about 1:30 in the morning watching this show because I couldn't let it sit. I was in a Australians in Film Zoom conference that we do sort of every month, and one of the writers in that conference was raving about this show. And I was actually, we're kind of doing the rounds where we're all talking about what we're watching in lockdown. And I wrote this one down, saw that it was on Binge, I believe. It's a BBC show, but you can watch it on Binge. And Edith and I got into it. And like you say, just couldn't stop watching it.
And then I got onto it thanks to your recommendation. And Wendy and I did exactly the same thing. We started it and intended to watch one and stayed up till 1 o'clock and watched all of them.
And there's only 3 episodes, but I think they're just shy of an hour each. So it's not a big ask. It's not a long show, but it's just so engrossing that once you get into it, you're stuck. You have to know what happens next.
Yeah, it is. Let's get to that shortly. Just, I don't know, talk about what we've been doing. It's been a little while since our last one. It's also been a little while since we both watched this show, so we're probably going to be grasping at straws trying to remember it. But what else is going on in life? You've been doing a fair bit of filmy stuff still, haven't you?
Yeah. So I think last time, or even a little while back, whenever it was that we met last, I was talking a little bit about how through lockdown I've still been applying for things and getting my work out there. Well, the latest little bit of news is that Evie, the short film that I spent forever finishing in post-production,
the Aussie dinosaur film, we finished that and have been entering it into festivals. Finally, we've had some hits, and I can tell you now that Evie will be premiering at Sitges, which is a Spanish film festival, a great genre festival, in October sometime, I believe. And then it's going to go on to screen at FilmQuest in Utah in the US. So I don't think I knew that one.
Cool. Yeah. So 2 really solid genre film festivals will be the first 2 off the ranks. And we are going to hear about more in the coming weeks. So hopefully more festivals, which would be great.
How cool when it's all about making a film for so long. And that one dragged, didn't it? It had a long tail. And then all of a sudden you start getting rewarded for something that you've done a while back. That's pretty nice.
And, some of these films, particularly short films with no money, right? The crew all come together for this concerted effort. And then 3 years of post-production go by and they all kind of forget that they made this thing. And then one day, and it's usually just the writer, director, producer, just grinding away at this thing in the background silently. One day you get to reveal to them that this thing they worked on and put this effort into for nothing is now going to go out into the world. And it's nice when it comes back around. Some of those films just disappear. Like something goes wrong in post and they realize it's not going to work and the crew just never hear about it again. So it's nice not to do that.
Yep. Nice little present to everybody. Absolutely. Absolutely. What have you been up to, Doc?
Well, I like you have taken a week off, so we are both free and easy for a week, and that's no small thing because like work really has been tough, I think, for both of us for ages. But now a week off, so we've had 2 or 3 days into that, and I'm just trying to come down, to be honest, and I'm trying to just do a lot more reading. I'm just trying to get back to my creative brain and my normal self. So what am I reading? Maybe
it takes 3 or 4 days. That's common,
yeah,
right? Just to get yourself out of that weird ongoing loop of rocking up at your desk every morning for Zooms and grinding away at whatever it is you're grinding away at.
No, it's just so much more fun just playing games. Have you read this, Siddhartha, Herman Hesse?
No.
It's pretty good. I think you'd like it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only a short read, but I'm enjoying it. It's maybe 80 pages.
Add it to the list. Let me show you what I'm reading at the moment, because I found this in my pagan mythology searches, because that's something that I'm working on at the moment. I came across, Randall's Round by Eleanor Scott, which is it's kind of a collection of ghost stories and pagan stories from the 1920s. And it's a ripper. I'm loving it. They're just short stories. The first one was a bit naff, I thought, actually. But the second story, oh man, it really made me think of The Haunting of Hill House or Bly Manor. Like it had that gothic horror vibe to it. But it's also, it sort of halfway through becomes like a bit of a treasure hunt. Because the guy who owned the house previously, who was the ghost that they're kind of looking into, has hidden treasure in the house somewhere, or so they think, and he's left a trail of clues. And so these two, this American and this English gentleman, are on a treasure hunt, only to uncover a monster, basically. So that's it. It's cool so far. Loving it.
I think short stories are due for a big comeback, in my opinion. And I've felt like I'm clawing away at a novel, as is half the planet. But I just think sometimes just forget that stuff and just churn out some stories that you can whip up in a night. So I think there's something in that. But
please do. I can't wait to read some shorts by you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, that can be the challenge.
Yeah. One short this week, Doc. One short.
Okay. Good. I'll submit at the end of the week.
And it doesn't have to be dark and twisted. You can be.
Well, I think it's likely to be dark and twisted. I think most of the stuff that comes out of our heads usually
That's
is.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, I've read other things of yours that are particularly dark and twisted recently as well, but let's save all that for another day.
We'll save it for another day.
Let's get back onto the
time.
Well, time. I was going to say the non-dark and twisted, but it's extremely dark and twisted in a way.
It is. It's that brand of dark and twisted that is just all too real. It's a situation that thousands and thousands of people are living through right now, and it is very dark and twisted.
And let me start with looking at those faces behind you on your background. Sean Bean's face, and he's aged into that face so beautifully. Like it says so much, doesn't it?
He really has. Yeah, it's great. It's great. Well, should we give a little synopsis of Time, what it's about, talk a little bit about the characters, etc. And should we start once again with what IMDb says the synopsis is, because it's particularly crap, if you ask me.
Is it? Well, why don't you give me IMDb's one, and then I'll give you the one that I'm looking at on Wikipedia.
That will be better, because IMDb has fallen to this problem of like not knowing which synopsis to give, whether it's the one for the whole show or one for the episodes. And so if you just go to Time, what you get is, I believe, one of the episodes. Anyway, Eric is a prison officer who tries to protect those in his charge. When one of the most dangerous inmates identifies his weakness, Eric faces an impossible choice between his principles and his love for his family.
Now you see that to me tells exactly and literally half the story.
Yes.
So
and really that's really sort of the overarching plot of like one character. And it leaves out entirely, though, Sean Bean's character in a way. It does not entirely, but he's not mentioned by name and really the story is his.
It's more his.
Yeah.
Well, I'll read you Wikipedia's version, which is leans towards the same problem, but is a little bit better.
Okay.
Mark Cobden is a newly imprisoned, consumed by guilt for his crime. No, hang on. Let me start again. Mark Cobden is newly imprisoned, consumed by guilt for his crime, and way out of his depth in the volatile world of prison life. So there you go, Sean Bean.
Okay, so now we got both characters. We just need to combine those synopses, and we'd sort of be closer.
Oh no, Wikipedia does. It then goes on to say he meets Eric McNally, an excellent prison officer. I love how excellent that sort of judgment of him in a synopsis doesn't quite sound right. An excellent prison officer doing his best to protect those in his charge. However, when one of the most dangerous inmates identifies his weakness, Eric faces an impossible choice between his principles and his family. That's taken from your one.
They've taken it from IMDb. Okay. Well, so I think that covers the show. There's not much more to say, really. It's all there.
So they did an okay job after all.
Well, can I just add to that, perhaps, that the reason Sean Bean's character, who is Mark Cobden, is in prison, pretty important, I think, is that he's a drunk.
Yeah.
And one night he runs over an Uber driver on a bicycle, I guess, and he's presented with this problem of, do I stop and help this man, or do I get back in my car and keep driving? And he chooses the latter. And that, and I guess you should add too that he's a fairly respected teacher, even though a lot of people seem to understand that he's a drunk. So, he's got a lot to lose, and he decides to drive away. And that's what lands him in prison. And it's important because you get this strong feeling that he is trying to atone, and his time in prison is something that he's sort of taking seriously. He's not pretending he's not guilty. And so you get this kind of man who's done wrong, but he's quite honest, dropped in prison in a situation where he's clearly a fish out of water. Like, he's ill prepared for the system.
I think there's an important other layer to what you've just said. And that's that initially you don't know what he's done as a viewer. You just see him enter prison. He looks quite a respectable character, and you're seeing him having to go through all the motions, those awful things that they have to do in order to get in, like strip search and come into contact with all these crazy characters. And then it's only a little bit later, I think, that you start to learn more about what he's done, and that just sort of comes out slowly. And then there's a kind of flashbacky sequence that actually shows everything that you just stepped out there. But you only know that from memory, like about halfway through, don't you?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's the end of episode 1 or if it comes in episode 2, and I just can't remember exactly where it lands. But that's right, and it's a good point. All when you enter this show is that he's in prison, like he's entering the gates of prison right from the get-go, and he's soft, like he's in trouble. You just get that sense straight away. He's a guy who is just so out of his depth, and in there with some pretty wild people. And the other thing you get off the bat is that Stephen Graham's character, Eric McNally, you learn pretty early on that he's tough but fair, and like seems to be like a pretty decent human. You get that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's why it makes it probably legitimate for Wikipedia to say he's an excellent prison officer, because he kind of is. He does everything by the book. He's completely trusted by his peers, and even the prisoners think of him as a fairly fair man. And I think that's probably half why they've targeted him.
Yeah, I
think with the Sean Bean character, it's quite important that they only drop what he's done a bit later. From a storytelling perspective, you really get to know him and like him and empathize with him. You feel like you're entering into prison with him. You really get to like him before you know what he's done.
Yeah.
Had you seen all that first up, you might think differently about him as he's entering.
I think that's right. I think it's actually really clever. And so that brings me to something that one of the reasons why I recommended this to you is that I think the writing in this is spectacular. I think it's really, really, really great writing. And that's what attracted me to it. Probably midway through the first episode, I was taken in by that, how well this thing was written and directed beautifully as well. Like, I think the director's Lewis Arnold. He's done a lot of TV shows, doesn't seem to be that old. He's kind of a youngish guy. And Jimmy McGovern's a lot older and seems to be, like his work goes right back to Cracker and Brookside and like these old British shows.
Yeah.
So, but the two of them together, it's a great team. I mean, I haven't seen any of the other shows by Lewis Arnold, but I'm quite keen to go through and have a look. Like I hear Des is pretty good.
I don't know that, but I do know that, and I agree that the writing is just exceptional.
Yeah.
As much for what's left out as what's put in, because they lean on that face. Both faces, both of those actors can do so much with gesture, little movements and pauses, and all those actorly things that make it come to life.
Yeah. Also interesting, a show that's almost entirely driven by men. You don't have too many of those on TV these days. And this one it's done well. You've got a situation where, there are going to be pretty much all men. I think there's a chaplain is she a chaplain? Is she
yeah, that'll do. Yeah, I think
something
so.
like that.
She's the connection with the church.
Yeah. She's a really strong female character in the midst, and probably the only one you can have in this situation. But like to have a show filled with men and still kind of it's not all like machismo, like it's not all crazy male testosterone stuff, like there's a lot of depth and there's a lot of humanity, and there's a softness to a lot of these men that comes out as well, which is really interesting. It's cool.
Yeah. I think the key points for Sean Bean's character, Mark Cobden, really were really pivotal, and it's almost what the whole film's about, at least his narrative. Number one was what to do when you're being bullied, how to handle that, and the fact that violence within the prison system is the answer. Like, that's what you kind of have to do to stand up for yourself. And he's not comfortable with it. So that's one pivotal moment. And then the other, of course, is what to do when you're propositioned to do something dishonorable, but feel you're forced into a corner to do that, as he is forced into later when he's asked to smuggle, was it drugs or stuff back into the prison. And with that last one, you've got that mirrored with the Eric character, who also is propositioned to do something that he shouldn't be, and they make different decisions.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's great. It's really clever. I mean, there's a lot of great characters in this show. All of them are pretty great. But these two, to have these two set up as they sort of begin and end as allies, but there's an oppositional thing that happens in the middle where they're kind of pitted. That you can see that there's tension that's going to happen there. And both for the two of them to come from such different backgrounds, it's really interesting. Good, clever writing and simple as well. Like, it's not too convoluted, any of it.
What did you think about Sean Bean's performance? Like I mentioned, his craggy face.
His craggy face.
But there's more.
Perfect. Look at those crags.
Than that.
Look at him. Especially up here. Oh, it's good stuff. Yep, you can't pay for that face. That's life experience and poor sunscreen application.
And you know what he also has, I reckon? Well, this is a reminds me of, in a way, but he brings to it the baggage of other stuff he's done.
Yes.
And in particular, because we don't know what he's done in this situation, I'm kind of seeing Ned Stark from Game of Thrones entering the prison. Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, Ned Stark is beyond reproach. So he couldn't have done anything too bad. I'm with him.
But then you think about the time where he tried to take the ring off Frodo, and that was bad. That was a low down, dirty move. So
yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, I think I've I've got more into Game of Thrones than I did with the
Okay.
Lord of the Rings.
Fair. But like he made up for it, you know, in the end in Lord of the Rings. Like he died honorably. So
yeah. And with Ned Stark, he died honorably as well.
he did.
And I feel that he starts as Ned Stark and then loses that polish once we know what he's done. But then it's like his journey to become Ned Stark again. He really wants to live an honorable life. And
Yep.
I think those words are used, aren't they? He wants to live an honorable life.
And you know, he's one of those guys who had lost his way and then through prison rediscovers himself. He's got one of those stories, which is interesting. A little bit of a Malcolm X story in a way.
I thought things also just, he's like a bit of an empty vessel. Oh, is that the right word? Not empty vessel as far as nothing upstairs, but things just happen to him. You know, so he walks in there and he just doesn't, initially at least, doesn't push back, doesn't assert his, you know, physicality on his environment at all. He just moves with it and rolls with the waves of what other people do to him.
Yeah.
And usually accepts it and just continues on. So therefore, when he does decide to push back, it's quite a momentous moment.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like you're saying, he comes into prison. He's trying to own his guilt. He's decided he's guilty, and when he went to court, he pled guilty, took the full rap, just went, I did it from the get-go. Goes to prison, thinks he's going to just do his time and keep his head down, but runs into characters straight away who want to push him around. And his first reaction is to let him push him around because he's, you know, sort of the beaten dog at this point. But that just makes it worse. That just makes it worse and worse and worse. And it's funny that other old timer who's sort of been in prison for a long time tells him, well, you've screwed yourself now. Like you need to fight back. It's just going to get worse and worse from here. And at a certain point, he has to do it. I can't imagine that. Like, could you imagine? This is one of the things that really strikes me about these sorts of films where you're dropped in prison with these characters who aren't set up for it, right? I would not be set up for prison. Like there is just no way that I would do well in that situation. And you watch everything that he's going through and you can't help but think, oh, what would I do there? And there's just no way that I would handle that well. Any of that, you know what I mean?
You've beaten me by a second because that was going to be my next point. The beauty of this whole series is this doesn't happen to me often, but it made me wonder, you know, what would I do?
Yeah.
And it made me really reflect on myself. And I was going to ask you, like, what would you have done? You know, you're not, I don't think, a fighter.
Not a fighter.
And yet you're getting beaten up in prison. What would you push back or not? I think I might eventually, but I don't know.
Yeah, see, I'm like if I see somebody else getting pushed around, I'm more likely to defend them than if somebody pushes me around. You know what I mean? Like it's the way I'm built. And you know, that guy who's the bully in prison, and clearly looks like he's a scrapper, like he's been at it for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I would know what to do if someone like that started, you know, pushing me around. So yeah, I completely had empathy for what Sean Bean's character was doing. Like that seemed like exactly what my reaction would be, to try and put my head down and just hope it'd go away.
Yeah. But how you could feel, I know we weren't in a cinema, but you could almost feel the cinema wanting him to fight back. Couldn't you?
Absolutely.
Like you could feel just how much we wanted him to win the day.
And of course they've got every other film that Sean Bean's been in their head, right?
In their heads,
where he's totally demolished people for just looking at him the wrong way.
Yeah. So we all know he can. We all know he's capable of it.
We know he's a hard ass. He's got it in him.
But how interesting when you compare to Eric McNally, the Stephen Graham character. So he is you know, beyond reproach, excellent prison guard, and then asked to do dodgy stuff or else they're going to basically beat up or kill his son, who is in another prison as an inmate. Like it's an impossible conundrum of what to do. Like what
he's screwed.
He's screwed. But the really interesting thing is seeing that impossible situation that the guard is faced with, and then the other impossible situation that Sean Bean's faced with later on, which is whether or not to smuggle in drugs. Both situations seem equally screwed.
Mm-hmm.
You just think there's no way out of this. They both sort of have to do it, is what I was thinking. And yet one of them does and one of them doesn't. And I think as of a morality tale, that really told me, I left the whole thing thinking, okay, the right thing is always to take the honorable path.
Yeah.
Even if you get beaten up, like you're still better off.
I totally agree. And I took that away from it too. Like the strong right thing is to take that honorable path. However, the difference is in this situation is that Eric McNally's son is the one who will get beaten to death.
Yeah.
Whereas in Sean Bean's situation, he will take the beating for not doing this dishonorable thing. And I think that's a vital difference. If it's your child who's going to be the one punished for your deeds, it's going to make you think differently about what to do next.
Yeah. So perhaps they both made the right decision.
I think for their situations, perhaps. That's right. And there's this awful thing where, big spoiler alert here, but like Eric McNally eventually gets caught for his smuggling in of contraband, and you can see that his senior officer that's caught him out is just torn up by this, because she knows of the situation that he's in. If you're a prison officer and you've got a child in prison and the prisoners find out, you're so compromised that you just can't do your job anymore. Honestly, he probably should have left the second his child went into prison. And I'm surprised that there wouldn't be some sort of law about that within the prison guard system. Like, you can't be that compromised.
Yeah.
Interesting to know if there is.
I was thinking, what's his way out of this? What should he have done?
Yeah.
And clearly it was leave before he even got in there.
Yeah. Oh, it's tough though, isn't it? But how good is that? What a great setup for a story. Like the stakes are so high for all of them, these characters.
Yeah, and that's the secret to a story, isn't it? Where the stakes and conundrums and, oh my goodness, how would you possibly cope with that? And these are all invented situations, but they're also might as well be, they're happening in real life.
Yeah, that is one of the things that's so great about this show, is that it's stuff that's happening in real life. It feels totally real. It's kind of like The Wire. Did you ever watch that show?
No, I haven't.
On HBO. So, you have this sense the whole way through that what you're watching is real life, and that you're being let into another world that's real. It's happening right there. And that being in that situation is basically going to present every character there with impossible choices every day. Like, it's just a terrible place to be,
Impossible choices make great drama. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you want to make any comments about the supporting cast? Like you mentioned the chaplain, but the bully, there were the two wives. They were quite distinct.
There were three, really, because it was two wives and the sister. Was it the sister of the Uber driver who becomes a big part of the victim? Yes. Becomes a big part of the story as well. Yeah. So the women were all like really, really strong. And it's interesting because they're all outside of prison. So you're kind of getting scenes with them enough to fill in the story and get the sense of that kind of feminine side of all of these male characters that are trapped in a box. And I thought all of that was really good. And to get that scene at the end that has to happen, where Sean Bean's character meets up with the sister of his victim was really powerful. I think I might have cried a little bit. Just a bit.
You are a softie. That's why you'll never go to jail.
That's right. That's right. I could never admit that in jail. The things that I've cried about. The Lion King, Chocolat.
Yeah, you are. You're not made for it.
I'm not.
You're an artist. And there's also, who else was there? There was the kid who Sean Bean used to teach, who ended up being. Well, no, before that there was that crazy one that was cutting himself.
Yeah.
Look, a lot of good, vivid characters, beyond those main two that you really feel for. That the other guy who was teaching teaching to write.
Yeah. The one of those three, I think the one he used to teach it's the guy he plays Daniel, Jack McMullen, I think it was. This is the guy who he had committed a crime as a teenager and had been in jail. Right? Was it him?
No, actually, that was the other one. The other one who never told anybody what really happened. And that's the only reason why he wasn't getting out. And the reason, spoiler alert, was that the guy that he killed, he was in love with.
Yeah.
And was too
you're right,
too macho to admit to that.
So that's a great character. That's a great character. There's the one who Sean Bean is sort of mentoring a little bit, I suppose, who he kind of organizes a meetup with him and his victims. And that's just like a devastating scene where the parents of this victim are trying to get the truth out of this guy, just to understand why he killed their son. And Sean Bean's just sitting there trying to be supportive. And you just watch this incredible thing unravel. Great scene. It's an amazing scene.
It was a great scene, and how much you could feel then of that kid. And you can picture exactly his story when he's at the bar and has like a little scuffle, and then due again to just, male machismo, not being able to back down. Like I think he had a knife or something, and he said it was easier, or it was more like he sort of had to do it then, because otherwise it would have been his pride at stake or something like that. Some nonsense, but clearly must be real out there.
Nonsense, and yet also I found really understandable somehow. You can understand how, as he explains the progression of the events, like you just go, okay, you just ended up in this terrible situation and you chose the wrong thing, and now you're in prison for the rest of your life.
Isn't it interesting with all these prison movies, like we were saying before, that Sean Bean's crimes took a while to come out, and most of them you have to wait a bit and you get to know the person before you know the crime. And I think that's what we're always thinking in these prison dramas. Oh, I wonder what he did.
That's true. That's true.
So it's quite a frequently used ploy, but it's also an effective one to get to know someone and then be wondering what they've done and then to find out.
Do you think maybe that we're a little bit hardwired to just judge people pretty quickly? So like if they were to tell you what these guys did first, it would be much harder to get you on side with these characters. And instead what they've done is they've gone, let's get you on side. Let's show you their humanity first, and then we'll tell you what they did. And then you'll find yourself conflicted because you're like, wait a second, I just grew to like this person, and now you're telling me this. Now what do I do?
It's like in real life when someone does something bad and you see the wife or the friends stand by them, something that is completely, you would write the person off, you would think. However, when you know someone and you know what goes into their makeup, good and bad, there's usually some redeeming things in there somewhere, no matter what they've done.
100%. That's the thing that, and you know, like we're talking about all these stories, but this is the thing that blows me away about this show is it is just 3 episodes, and there is so much in there. There's all these little subtle character things going on, little subplots and stories that sort of happen, but they're not off to the side. They're all beautifully woven in because while they're all happening, Sean Bean's character is growing. It's great.
It's really great. It has you. It doesn't let you go, does it? That's why you had to watch the second and the third. It does not let you go for a second.
Yeah.
Another scene that I'm just remembering now is when his dad dies, and he's getting ready for the funeral, and he's just about to leave for the funeral, and then all that other chaos stops him from going at the last minute. Like that was just heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
But then on the positive, just due to the brilliant writing, they still have what is a really nice celebration of his dad, and it's just done really, really well. So you get the tragedy and something nice.
The letter his mum reads out.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
that she was going to read to. Basically, you could imagine if he'd been sitting in the audience, like about. It was all about him and how proud his dad was of him.
I nearly cried then too, actually.
Oh, dude, it's gut-wrenching. That is gut-wrenching stuff. Oh my God. And to do it so cleverly that the chaplain, I'm just going to call it a chaplain, gives the letter to Sean Bean to read about himself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a clever move because that just makes it all the more gut-wrenching. You know, like if he has to read his own letter from his father to himself, and it's heavy stuff.
It was great though.
So should we talk about some things that we were reminded of, or did you have anything else you wanted to add first?
No, I think anything else can come out in these. We should wrap it up soon because we've gone long, but let's get to the name of the show. That reminds me of, I've got a handful, but do you have many?
No, I've only got 3 that I want to mention. Yeah.
That's about the same.
You go first.
I'll go first. Okay. The main one that it reminded me of was the Crossing Guard, a Sean Penn film starring Jack Nicholson and David Morse. Do you know it?
I know it, but I haven't seen it. And I hear great things about it.
It's one of my real favorites. I think Sean Penn's early career as a director was awesome. He did The Indian Runner with Viggo Mortensen and David Morse, and then The Crossing Guard with David Morse again. So in this one, David Morse is a drunk driver. Oh, how much can I tell you without spoiling? No, I think this
Go for it.
I think this is right at the start. David Morse is a drunk driver who kills a little girl. And the thing that really resonates with me, I've never forgotten it, is images of David Morse like trudging down the road by himself. And he's such a big, heavy man. And you can just feel the weight of guilt on his shoulders. And I just remember feeling so sorry for him. And that's exactly what's happened to Sean Bean. It's his fault. You know, he's done the wrong thing. I can't remember if it was a hit and run. I think this one was a hit and run as well. And it's just so awful. That film has Jack Nicholson then being the angry father who's, you know, being a Liam Neeson or Mads Mikkelsen out for revenge. And you just a little similar to the mother in Time. So you've got someone angry, but you can sort of empathize with the perpetrator.
You know, Sean Penn, I was about to say Ben, Sean Penn is he's a great reference for this, in that the films he directs are these, like, you know, we've got they're all sort of everyday people, you know, kind of Joes off the street, and probably from more of a working class background generally, put through some like really heavy human dramas and seriously tough situations. And you get a sense of that in this. That's what a lot of these characters are in the show.
Yeah, agreed. That's awesome. The Crossing Guard.
Pressing guard, one I have to see because I love Sean Penn and his work. So the obvious one is The Shawshank Redemption. I have to mention it. And I'll say it first because it is obvious, but we have two men in prison, different with very different perspectives, and essentially, through their time in prison, you see them change, you see them grow, and they grow together as well and influence each other. So Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman in that one. And it's just one of the great films as well. Shawshank Redemption is just awesome. Frank Darabont directed it. It's a beautiful thing. And I think just, this idea of institutionalization, I think they have as a theme in Shawshank Redemption is also in this as well.
Yeah, it is. It's in a lot of prison films, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
And I was thinking Shawshank Redemption, it was a red herring, but early on, when that guy that was cutting himself was taking glass off the window or something, I was thinking, oh wow, is Sean Bean gonna find some loop, some hole that he can crawl through
right
in the window? It was short-lived. That didn't happen, so it's not a spoiler.
Great. What else you got?
I've got well, let's stick with Sean Penn just really quickly. Dead Man Walking. So in that one, that's not a Sean Penn film, but he's the main character, and the whole thing from memory. It's been like 20 years since I've seen it, but
long time for me as well.
I can't even remember what he did, but the whole film is about coming to terms with what you've done. And he went through the whole film from memory, kind of claiming that he hadn't done stuff, and then right at the end he breaks down in what I still remember as a really moving scene and lets it all flood out. So I was reminded of that in several moments of the film, but such as when the young kid confessed to what he'd done, when that other guy who was in love with his mate, when he essentially confessed, and also with Sean Bean coming to terms with what he'd done.
That's great. It's been a long time since I've seen it as well. So I've got a prison show to mention as my next one. Oz.
I don't know Oz.
You don't know Oz? So I've only seen bits of Oz, and it's 1997, and I believe there was only one season, but it has. Let me just quickly look it
Oz,
up.
as in OZ.
OZ, yeah.
Or OZ, if anyone's watching this elsewhere.
Correct. And it's not connected to the Wizard of Oz. I think Oz refers to the name of the prison.
Yeah.
But it's got Harold Perrineau in it, I always think of him as Mercutio from Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, from Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
And I
try to avoid that one, but anyway.
Because that's just one of his most striking performances. But he's in it, and you just have this real sense of the prison and life in the prison and the sort of jungle aspect of it that you get in this show as well, where everyone's out running their own game, trying to, climb the ladder or stop from going down the ladder. Just really clever writing as well. So it made me think of that. And I already mentioned The Wire, so I think I could just add those as two TV shows that kind of made me think of this one.
You could go on and on with TV shows, couldn't you? If you wanted to.
Yeah.
Go in Australia, Prisoner.
Yeah.
And then Wentworth, which is the new Prisoner. Yeah. And then there's Orange is the New Black.
Exactly.
They're all women, but it's the same sort of stuff. Top Dogs,
100%.
And Chopper movies.
Yes. Stay away from Prison Break. Even though it's fun, it's not really. It doesn't have that sense of reality that you get with some of these other shows.
And I also haven't seen it.
Yeah. So what else have you got, Doc?
Two quickies. One is The Green Mile. And that one because of the perspective of the prison guard, and when all this stuff is happening, all this crazy stuff is happening within the prison. It's like it's a little one, but and the prison guard, is doing his job, but still has a life that's got its own traumas and things happening, and he's having to come to work every day and do his job with all this backstory. So I thought that was one.
That's
along
great.
the lines of the prison guard.
More Stephen King as well.
Yeah.
The other one I had in mind was Tyrannosaur.
Tyrannosaur.
Did you ever see that or hear about it?
I don't think so. Is that
It's a bit
what
of an
era?
indie film. Good question. Let me just quickly look. I think it's 2000s. I just can't remember exactly.
Maybe
when.
I have. Tell me about it. I'll come
So
to it.
it's starring Peter Mullen.
Mm.
You'll know his face when you see him.
Okay, I'll look him up. I don't know his name.
He's from the UK. He's fantastic. He's just a guy who just is dealing with rage problems. He's just got serious anger issues.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much driving himself into the ground. And it's just set in this little town. And he kind of comes across another character, Hannah, who's she's a Christian charity shop worker, and she essentially helps him to find his redemption or find himself. And there's some similar themes of a guy who's middle-aged to older, who's kind of completely lost his way. He's going off the rails, and he finds himself, and it's a struggle. But it's just a great film, and it made me think of this a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds like it would. Oh, I've got one last one. It's probably my weakest one, but also the best actual piece of art of them all.
Okay, nice.
And that's Atonement, by a novel by Ian McEwan, and has also become a movie.
Is the Joe Wright film?
I don't know who directed it, but I think it's a pretty good film.
Yeah, it's a great film. Yeah,
but I'm more enamored by the book, and the premise is that this young girl does something wrong. She causes a whole lot of drama and basically wrecks people's lives when she's very young due to a misunderstanding, and then spends the rest of her life basically working out how to atone for what she's done. I think that's right. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I think that's broadly speaking
I love that film. Yeah,
Did you?
I love that film. Yeah, I loved it. Thought it was great. It's one of the things that got me onto Joe Wright, and just realizing how freaking great a director that guy is.
What else has he done?
Hannah. Did you ever see Hannah?
Don't think I have.
He also did it. He also did a version of Anna Karenina.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Let me see what else we got.
Wow. Well, he's got good taste. If he's doing Tolstoy and Ian McEwan, that's a good start.
I know, right? There's something really like sumptuous. That's a terrible word to be using.
Lovely word.
But just about the way he creates his films, like they're just beautiful.
Who's in Anna Karenina?
It's Keira Knightley again.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he did Pride and Prejudice as well.
Anyway, Atonement. I got it towards the end, especially when it went away from the prison drama and went towards, okay, this guy has done something wrong. He's reformed within himself, but there's someone there outside that is, their life is wrecked because of this, and he just wants to do whatever he can to make that right, and knowing that he can't. There's nothing he can do, really.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's deep stuff too. I mean, this show does tap into a lot of those just like deep human dramas that I think we're all kind of, they're themes that we've come across many, many times. And when they're done well, they're really powerful.
Agree.
Well, Doc, I think we've covered it.
I think we've covered it. Maybe not as well as anyone could, but I think we've given it a crack.
We've given it a fair crack.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Maybe something a bit lighter next time.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, we'll have to think about that. I have nothing off the top of my head, but there's plenty coming out, plenty of good stuff coming out that we can get into.
What I am looking forward to is us getting into the studio. We're still in lockdown.
Yes.
It feels like we're in an episode of Time.
Yes.
Because we can't get out. But we will soon. We'll keep doing this on Zoom until then, but we'll hope to see you in person.
Absolutely. I think Sean Bean's character does about 3 years in prison. And if we're not careful, we're already a year and a half almost get cracking onto 2. It won't be long.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh God, imagine.
Anyway, I think
right, Doc.
that's enough. Been great, Baron, and see you next time.
Catch you next time.